Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by John Paul Mason. We are here, JP. It's a Thursday. It's the day after the night before, where we have won a meaningful Champions League game. Not only won it with some style. And I was saying to you before we came on live here, I've been covering the games now live for 4 years. 4 years we've been doing it on Acsom. And you're sitting there, most of the time thinking, I just wish I was there, right? But none more so than last night. Feeling like I've completely lost out on something, let's be honest, it's historic. It's a historic victory. People can go on about the quality of the opposition all they like. Last night for Celtic, for what we're trying to achieve in Europe, for the reason that Brendan Rodgers came back to the club, for the dynasty and the legacy of the great European sides that went before, last night was important, JP. You were there to enjoy it. Talk us through it.
I mean, you don't normally go into Champions League games, especially not opening Champions League games, with any sort of confidence at all. But, I mean, got a few texts from mates yesterday saying, what do you think tonight? And I was like, I'm pretty confident. I don't know how I can't be confident when I've seen the side playing as well as they have in the first couple of months of the season, and just feeling a bit kind of emboldened that we've got some players now in positions that can do some serious damage at this level. And that was more overriding feeling going into the game. I wasn't really bothered about what they were bringing to the table. I was kind of more concentrating on what we could do rather than worrying about, that sick feeling you get in your stomach when a European team breaks at Celtic Park. You just go, oh no. And it's almost like they've just flicked a switch and they just start playing these unbelievable passes to each other, and then about 25, 30 passes later, it's in the back of the net, and
I'm visualising it, JP. I'm visualising it, and the feeling you get when that move starts, and we're on the back foot, and they just seem to be, and you're waiting on that moment. We spoke about it last night. The reaction of a small section of the Celtic Park crowd that come, and it's quite quiet, and it's 600 to 1,000 fans or something, but they're all celebrating, and the players are going wild. And you look down to the dugout, they're all going wild, and the rest of the stadium is absolutely gutted. And there's sometimes a feeling of inevitability that that's going to ruin your night. Didn't happen last night, though.
No, and it didn't really ever enter my head that it was going to happen as well, because I kind of felt like we would get the job done regardless of goals conceded or anything like that. And obviously we did concede a goal, but I didn't think it was going to be as emphatic as 5-1. I saw a couple of screenshots of people's bookie slips from last night, and I think 5-1 was something like 33-1 or something like that.
Right.
And someone put a fiver on it, so we'll be having a good time today. But yeah, you just go back through. Just before we came on here, I was like, I want to go back through the opening games of the Champions League and just how bad has it been, and to actually have it sitting in front of me it just shows how big a game last night and big a result last night was. Because you go back to, sorry for any PTSD that
there'll be a few triggers here. There definitely will be.
Bigger warning. So 2001, Juventus 3, Celtic 2. We all remember that. The first night in the Champions League. That was, I watched that in the Volunteer in Bathgate. I can totally remember Martin O'Neill's face on the big screen in the volley in Bathgate, where he was going absolutely mental after the game about...
Were you playing pool in the volley?
No. I don't think it had a pool table, actually. But it was a well-known... I mean, I think its nickname was the Vatican. So any pub like that in Bathgate with that nickname, you knew it was a good place to go and watch Celtic games. So Then Bayern 2003, Bayern Munich 2, Celtic 1. Sucker punch with a free kick. I totally remember that. Didn't need to look that up. Can remember that.
Tell me one player you associate with that game.
Alan Thompson.
Right.
He scored, didn't he?
I was thinking more of Magnus Hedman.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, he
Thompson. But that's an unfortunate thing. Thompson scores against that calibre of European opposition, and it's often forgotten about. You remember his brilliant scissor kick against Barcelona, etc. But because we didn't win the game, it's almost confined to the history books. Yeah, you're right. Great.
Barcelona 1, Celtic 3. The heartbreak of Henrik Larsson coming back. That was the first game. I forgot that was the first game. Man United 3, Celtic 2 at Old Trafford, with a very, very dodgy penalty that they got.
Yeah, yep.
Shakhtar Donetsk 2, Celtic 0. A routine victory for Shakhtar at home. It's just swatted as a side. 2 back-to-back home. We weren't in the Champions League for 4 years. Celtic 0, Aalborg 0. Benfica 0-0 at home as well. And then Milan 2, Celtic 0. It was the night I was mugged in Milan. It's a different story for another time. Barcelona 7, Celtic 0. That was the one I'd forgotten about last week. Celtic 0, PSG 5. Opening game.
I'm triggering.
Real Madrid at home 3-0. Feyenoord away 2-0 last season, and then out of nowhere 5-1 at home to Slovan Bratislava.
Yep.
And the dissenters will obviously say because it's a weakened side, it's the changed format in the competition. But everyone always says you can only beat what's in front of you. And
absolutely,
last night we emphatically beat a team in front of us that were our first obstacle in this Champions League group. We've now got a far bigger problem to deal with Borussia Dortmund away, but at least we're not going into that game with no points and no confidence. We were going into that game with a bit of optimism. I mean, obviously we know it's a tall order to do anything over there, but it's just so great to just see everybody come out of the ground last night and knowing that everyone was experiencing that moment with you, and it was a shared moment. It was like nobody else has experienced this before. It's not as if you could say, oh well, that old boy over there can remember us winning our first game in the Champions League. The Champions League's only existed for us for 24 years, so it's a completely shared sort of celebration of finally getting something over the line in the first game. And I mean, we were really, really good last night.
Oh, it was a huge. Listen, we could say it's a huge monkey off your back, right? Absolutely. When you rhyme out the litany of failures or disappointments, I'm going to say failures for some of them, because getting, beaten 7-0 or 5-0 from any team in Europe is something that has to be avoided for Celtic. And by the way, there are teams in this group, maybe not our opponents, who are more than capable of doing that to decent sides. I mean, Bayern Munich showed it, right? 9-2. Last night, JP, was massive. I'm saying it's historic. I don't care what anybody says about the opposition, because it's our first fixture. We've got to go out and win it. I'm like everybody else. I'm writing down the fixtures, thinking to myself, okay, so they reckon that 9 or 10 points will get you into that 9th to 24th. Right, where are we getting the 9 to 10 points from? Because the 1 to 8, that's your elite teams. You know what I mean? And they're talking maybe 15 points to finish at least 9th. 5 wins in the Champions League, come on. Let's be realistic. So you're then looking at 9 to 20. And then I'm thinking, where do we get the wins? Where do we get 3 wins and maybe a draw? And this was one of the games I was focusing on. And I thought to myself, home advantage, Slovan Bratislava got to be respected, and they're there on absolute merit. They've probably worked harder than anyone else through the qualifiers to get there. But I thought the way we shaped up, and also the added quality that Brendan Rodgers has been banging on about since the day he walked back in the door, right, was there for all to see. I want to talk about Engels. We'll be talking about Schmeichel, all the goal scorers, Liam Scales, Greg Taylor, Brendan Rodgers himself. There's so much to discuss here. I want to start off actually by giving a big shout out to the Celtic fan base, of which I wish I was amongst them, because these are the nights where you're looking at it going, this is history and I'm missing it. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll be feeling like that, right? If you're not in the stadium. And you're looking across to the Green Brigade with that banner of that phenomenal image. It's one of my favourite Celtic images, Big Billy and John Clark pretending they're sleeping. Just absolutely perfectly symmetrical, with the European Cup in the middle and the teddy bear in the European Cup. What a banner. Absolutely stunning banner.
And to bring it back out in the 67th minute as well.
Absolutely brilliant.
There's a guy, and I think I met his son next to me. They don't normally sit there, and the wee boy looked over and he went, "It's the same tifo, Dad. It's the same tifo." And I was like, "Aye, mate, 67th minute." And then all the lights went up, and the wee boy was just like,
"Wow,
I've never seen it before. It was amazing."
But what you're saying there, that wee boy, the reaction that he had in the 67th minute with the lights, with the tifo. I think the Celtic fans do that to the opposition players, right? And in the past, I'm thinking to myself, there's been certain players walked on that park, JP, and they're like, oh, this is, tick it off the bucket list. Let's go and beat them now, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're there and it's part of the kind of journey for them. Whereas I think we need to use it to our advantage to spook them. And you're looking at some of the players looking about thinking, wow, we really have entered the lion's den. Can we call it a lion's den, JP? Can we call it a lion's den? Yes, we absolutely can. And then you look at the reactions, the wee mascots and all that kind of stuff. And it really is a cauldron. And the positive energy, Brendan Rodgers touched on it. Going into the game, he felt in amongst the stadium, and he's talking about the fans, and he's giving the fans the credit that we felt as a support that we could get a result last night. And he spoke about that in such a way that it spreads into the confidence of the players, JP. We should never underestimate that.
No, I think all the players that were there last night, in the main, had played Champions League football before, I guess, the majority of them. And I think that they obviously know what the ground can bring if you're coming at it positively, if you're coming at the game in a positive frame of mind off the back of really good results at home, not conceded a goal in the league. That's got to be sort of a winner's mentality around the team as well. So it just felt like finally there was a perfect storm in our favour in terms of no injuries, everybody's available. It was the team, I guess most people, maybe minus Bernardo, maybe people would have picked Bernardo instead or thought that the manager would go with Bernardo. But other than that, and then you get a guy slotting into the midfield like Arne Engels, who suddenly feels, I think last night to me, it was like, wow, we finally got a player that, well, admittedly is a big money signing. We've spent a lot of money on him. But how many times have we faced a European team who has that one player who they've spent a lot of money on? And invariably is the difference. Mudryk, I know Mudryk was not a big buy for them, but it was a big sale. So that was the value that guy was bringing to that Shakhtar Donetsk team. And Engels last night just had that kind of quiet arrogance about him, that
a real assurance that he had, isn't it?
He's just turned 21, and to play like that in a Champions League game, it's like, right, we know where this money's gone here. This is not going on a gamble. This is a surefire bet. Like, this guy's going to eclipse everything that's happened in our transfer world in the last 20, 30 years.
It shortens the odds. And listen, I know that you can make big money flops, JP. We've made a few in the past ourselves. But if you shop in that market, it shortens the odds with the likelihood of that player being good enough and being of a good enough calibre and quality at this level. I mean, who did we buy in the midfield last season? Kwon, Home, right? So we're now shopping in a different market. And with that comes a higher price tag. Apparently 11 rising to 13 million pounds based on appearances, etc. And like you say, he looked absolutely on his level, not out of his depth at any moment. I mean, he called himself a box-to-box player. When was the last time we had one? And then you add to that the athleticism of him, the physical nature of the player. He's got this, and I don't know how you train this. I don't even know if it's a skill. Let me know in the comments. He's got this uncanny ability to draw a foul. He done it against Hearts. He done it a few times last night. I don't know if it's a timing thing, JP. He's strong. His passing ability is brilliant. Always demanding the ball. Always looking to take ownership of the situation. And by the way, not just penalties, set pieces, be that a free kick, a corner kick, absolute quality. I mean, as you say, just turned 21, and you're looking at him going, this is the real deal we've got here.
Yeah, there was also, it was a very small moment that I don't think actually maybe even came to anything, but there was a moment in the second half where he had an option of where to pass, and the more difficult pass was, I think, to James Forrest, and he just absolutely leathered it, but put it just enough on it for it to sting off James Forrest. He knew that James Forrest would probably have the touch to control it, but he had, I don't know, I need to see it back, but he had a couple of options, and James Forrest was the run through the middle, and he just absolutely leathered it, and it went right through into the 18-yard box. for Forest, and I just thought, wow. And the guy was still ticking way deep into the game, so he's got the stamina, he's got the fitness. He's not some guy that's just going to give us half an hour or 45 minutes or something like that. This guy's a 90-minute game player, which was what Matt O'Reilly was. Matt O'Reilly, look at the minutes that we've lost from Matt O'Reilly missing, because he played every single game, and
he was always there. Yeah,
more often than not to the end as well. So if you take players like Matt O'Reilly at the team, then you need to replace them. And again, last night got me thinking, without Matt O'Reilly, we may probably not have signed Engels. Like Engels saw the path that Matt O'Reilly's has gone on to get to a £25 million move in Brighton, and he's seen the fact that Matt O'Reilly's played in Champions League, got good numbers in the domestic league. So him and his agent have probably just went, well, we copy that blueprint, we might double our money here. Well, more than double our money, and that's the pathway that has been set by someone like Matt O'Reilly. So we've got a lot of thanks is due to Matt O'Reilly and his performances that have shown someone else the way at this level, because Arne Engels will have had many, many other clubs to choose from that may have got him greater rewards in the short term, but he's obviously a clever guy, got a good agent, and they're thinking long term instead. So it's probably back to enjoy him while he's here, because that guy's going places. There's no doubt about that.
And by the way, I don't mind saying this again, because I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I was told by someone who deals within the scouting and recruitment data fields in football that when he signed, he was way ahead of anything else we had signed in the preceding 5 or 6 years. In fact, I think it was longer than that, because the players that we were commenting on were the likes of Jeremy Frimpong when he came to the club. Matt O'Reilly, when he came to the club, he says Engels is a different calibre player at this stage of his career, JP. Just based on...
So I would to pay 11 million for him.
Yeah. But the thing with that is, and I go back to last week when we spoke to Scott Coyne from the Belgian Football Podcast, you're looking at the absolute greatest situation that you would be in is to produce a player like that. Imagine producing a player like that. When was the last one that we produced? And we're probably quite a bit off doing that at the moment. I don't think that we're bringing our own through at that stage, but there's so many simplistic ways to look at it. You look at a player at the moment in the same age range who has come through at Celtic, and you ask yourself, why has Engels progressed and our player not? Because we'll loan them out, we try and get them first team football, but if they stay at the football club, they're playing fifth tier. Scottish football, which is never ever going to improve their game, right? It's not that long ago it was junior football, wasn't it? So when you're considering a player like, let's say, Ben Summers went to Dunfermline on loan. He's now away over to Austria on loan. He's the same age as Arne Engels. So what's the difference in terms of the development? There's going to be an element, one player's maybe just better than the other one, JP, I get it. But what happened with Engels was that, Bruges have got a reserve team in the pyramid at a good level. They're in the second tier. They're called Club NXT, Club Next, and he played a season and a half with them. Loads of game time under his belt. Gets a move to Augsburg. Not the biggest move in the world, but he's going to a very good league. And he gets another season under his belt there. So by the time he's 20, he's played 2 to 2.5 seasons of senior football. Now, Augsburg were not a great side. They're 11th in the Bundesliga, but you're up against really, really good players, JP. And at that point, he's gone from a 200 grand player, because that's all they signed him for, to an 11 million pound player in 1 year. So I sometimes look at that and think, what if we were able to give more game? And it's difficult. I get it. We want to win every game. But we must have talent within Celtic who, given the right game time and the right opportunities, would develop in such a way that they're ready. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. Engels definitely is at that level. What about the rest of the midfield? Because that was a big discussion going into the game last night, JP. Who's going to be the three in the midfield? McGregor's name's on the jersey, of course it is. He's the one that's going to go under the radar, though. He had a great game last night, Callum McGregor, didn't he?
He did. Always ready to... The dovetailing between him and Engels was really impressive. I think, obviously, Callum McGregor is going to know a player, having, he's now the wrong side of 30, you could say. But the experience that Callum McGregor's had, and he'll have played with, I think, many midfielders Callum McGregor's played with at Celtic.
I know.
So he'll know a good one when he sees it, and I'm pretty sure he's very happy with the fact that he lost Matt O'Reilly, somebody that he could absolutely rely upon last season to either dig Celtic out of a hole, whether it's with rolling his sleeves up and just being calm on the ball or getting a goal, because he obviously did get quite a lot of goals last season. But Engels is all over that pitch. He covered every blade of grass last night, and Hatate, I didn't think had a great first half, but the whole team didn't play unbelievable in the first half. But the second half, guy sits in front of me was like, didn't think Kuhn had a very good first half, and I was like, we'll have a good second half, because that invariably seems to be what happens. We'll get a good half and a bad, or an all right half, and then the second half they really motored on, and it was just, I'm glad for Callum McGregor that we've brought somebody in that isn't inferior to Matt O'Reilly. I'm not saying he's superior, but at least you've got a guy in there that's going to clock in every week and give you 100%, and 100% at Arne Engels is a pretty good return, I think. So, I'm sure he's really happy about that. And again, just for Callum McGregor as well, he's probably gone into Champions League games, not so many actually in the past, because of that big gap where we didn't play in the Champions League between 2017 and 2022. Mm-hmm. So think of all the times that Callum McGregor's missed out on Champions League, despite winning the league, trebles, all the rest of it. You don't get to play at the top table, but I think he's obviously played in games in the past where we've gone in horrendously unprepared. So it's kind of good when you can actually be like that to your captain. Well, here's a side that you're not going to be putting out fires as much, because you've got people you can rely upon in the midfield.
This is a big thing with regards to, a like for like, and we don't know over the fullness of time after 2.5 seasons what the progression of Arne Engels is going to be, but we're talking about quality. So you lose quality, you bring quality in. It's not as though we lose quality and we bring in a couple of project signings like we did last season with Kwon that we mentioned before, and Home. This is a guy you're thinking, right, he's going to step right in there. The other player that I was really interested to see last night and see how they were able to acclimatise to the step up to the Champions League was Adam Idah. Obviously starting on the bench, and I think that was the right decision. He comes on and scores a goal, cool as a cucumber, right? And people have been saying, JP, since he came back, he's looked off it. Absolutely, understandably so. Because of the circumstances of the pre-season, what happened at Norwich, he wasn't in early enough really for anybody's liking. But I think when he came on last night, I was thinking to myself, right, when was the last time an Irishman scored? Liam Scales about an hour before. But Adam Idah, Champions League, that was a big question. Can he do it in the Champions League? A player whose transfer fee undoubtedly will rise to £9.5 million. He comes in and he does do it. JP, I was delighted for him. Hopefully it'll kickstart his second term at Celtic as well, because I'm not saying anybody was doubting him, but there was a few grumbles in the comments.
Yeah, I think I said when we were talking about him that I was really excited to see him play in the Champions League, because if he comes in and scores a couple of goals at Champions League level, then what does that do? One, for his confidence, and two, for his transfer value, because I think there are still people that will be like, oh, I can't believe we paid £9.5 million for that guy. Norwich City, can he get a game at Norwich City and everything else? Despite what he did for us last season, that seems to have just been kind of pushed to one side. It was so influential in our season last season that you've got to give the guy a chance to get up to speed this season. And yeah, he isn't probably firing on all cylinders, but it's well known as to why that is, because he could have and should have been with us a lot sooner. He should have been to America and back with the rest of the squad, and all of that sort of stuff. But I think obviously would have been disappointed getting the goal on Saturday and then it being ruled off. I mean, I can't believe Palma played them off. I mean, that's quite lazy, really, from Palma.
That's his problem. I think that's his problem, JP. I always go back to that Aberdeen game, the semi-final last year, where he comes on the park and clearly doesn't follow instructions. You know what I mean? And you're thinking to yourself, all the ability in the world, he could have all the ability in the world. If you don't have the personality, which is an important one, but also the mentality to sit down and do exactly what Brendan Rodgers is telling you to do, you won't survive. You won't survive, never mind in Europe, but domestically, you just won't survive at Celtic. It's been interesting how he's been a bit part player this season, whereas last season we were kind of relying on Palma, even going into the Champions League games.
Yeah.
So you're right. You know, Ida gets the goal, and I was saying that after the Hearts game, how good would it have been that he's off the mark again? You know, well, he only had to wait a few days.
Yeah, I'm sure if he was to be given the choice of the two, he would have taken the Champions League goal.
Yeah,
purely for the fact that it was his first time playing in the competition. But yeah, he took it so well. First touch, great ball from Forrest, who I think they're kind of pally off the pitch. So they obviously that's going to translate. Just watching that 99 documentary about the Man United treble, and there's a whole chat about like when Dwight York came in for 12.5 million. Like Andy Cole was like, "Oh, my numbers up here. I've not been scoring. I've been out of form. They brought this guy in. He's going to replace me." And then they ended up accidentally playing really well together one game, and then it was like York and Cole, but they become pals off the pitch.
Yeah,
and that really sort of started to feed into their performances on the pitch, because Andy Cole would sort of put an arm around them and invited them into his family home and everything else and things like that. So I'm pretty, from what I've heard, that they are pally off the pitch. So long may that continue if they're going to set up goals for each other in the Champions League as a result of an unlikely off the field friendship.
Well, I've spoken about even that in the past. I remember reading a report. I actually think it was about Andy Cole and Terry Sheringham at the time. You remember they didn't get on, did they? It was Sheringham and Cole. And, you know, the report was in the 442 mag where they said that it can work the other way, JP. You know, you could be in a situation where there's two options and Andy Cole's in the best position, but you pass to somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's up here, it's a split second. And that's where the unconscious bias kicks in, even in a football player's mind. It does exist. I'm really keen to get everybody's thoughts on last night. We won the game 5-1. What a night. Absolutely gutted I wasn't there in person. Were you there? How did you find? I know one guy who was there, and that's you and Boy Martin, because he was on the telly. I seen him on the telly last night. I think it was STV getting interviewed. We should fear no one now. I like that vibe. I feel we have finally arrived and are a real Champions League team. Very exciting times ahead. I think there needs to be a bit of abandon on a day like today, JP, because you and I know well enough that if you do a live stream, you can get very excited and emotional about things and confident about things, and it might come back to bite you in the backside. Listen, we've just beaten Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League 5-1 on day one of the campaign. I think we're all right to have a wee bit of that air about us today, JP. It's no arrogance. We're absolutely chuffed. We're positive. And
there's no point in being a football.
Why are you into it? Exactly. Why are you into it? Is Brendan, here's one from Paddy. It's always a pleasure to hear from Paddy Lavery. Here we go. Is Brendan now totally forgiven? I'm going to put it out to the audience at the moment. We're 1,200 strong on this Thursday live stream. What about yourself, JP? I was asked the question the week that he came back, and I said that there's no apology required. Remember, I said that. No apology required. Success will bring the forgiveness. And we've already had the success. A long time ago for me, Paddy. A long time ago, he's been forgiven. Is there anybody in the Celtic fan base who still harbours a wee bit of resentment there, do you think? I don't
Without a doubt, there will. Oh, you know there will be. There's no way you're ever going to get everybody that supports this.
That's true. Yeah.
To agree on everything. There'll be people that probably still don't think Henrik Larsson was a good striker, or they think he was a mercenary for going to Barcelona and not go to Sweden where he said he was going to go. And
he never celebrated that goal in the game you spoke about earlier.
No, he didn't indeed. That was definitely one of the most. That was one of the hardest nights ever at Celtic Park. I think seeing that, a guy that you absolutely idolise in another team's shirt scoring a goal and setting one up.
It's It's like your best mate. I know, but not quite doing the dirty. I mean, he even did that with class. He scores the goal and doesn't celebrate. Hands down the side.
The Brendan Rodgers thing, though, for me, just to go back to that, I maintain that I saw simply him putting on a Celtic tie and a Celtic suit jacket and coming back. That was the apology that I was looking for, or maybe not looking for because I didn't expect it to happen. But obviously, when it happened, I was like, all right, well, the fact that he's decided to effectively take a step back, because you could argue that a ruthless, money-hungry, fame-hungry manager would be looking for their next cash cow, whether it was to kind of put a full stop to their career by going to Saudi or China or the United States or something. Just
he could still be rattling about the English Premiership.
No, absolutely.
There's so many managers that just go from job to job. He could be one of them.
Yeah, and the thing is, I guess my thoughts on him when he left to go to Leicester was, obviously we were just that a moment in time for him to, enjoy managing Celtic, do well, and give us as much success as he could in that time, and then move on. And although it wasn't the timing at all, the time that I wanted him to leave, that was where I was thinking, it'll be Leicester, and then it'll be somebody else after that. There's no way.
I thought, international football, maybe go to Spain, something like that.
No way he's coming back to Celtic. And in much the same way as, Matt O'Reilly leaving, you're like, how good would it be if Matt O'Reilly came back to Celtic? There's no way Matt O'Reilly's coming back to Celtic. Not if he follows the progression of what his career's been so far, like in terms of the incremental stages that he's stepped up from, Fulham, MK Dons to Celtic to Brighton to whoever else is next. So,
what do you think's next for him? Probably, I think we said maybe a top 6 club in one of the top 6 leagues.
I think that would be where he'd be aiming to play, like Spain or Germany or something like that. There's not as if they don't know about him there. They'll probably be keeping a watchful eye on him and how he gets on in the English Premier League. But yeah, I genuinely, Brendan Rodgers coming back to Celtic in the first instance before he'd, not physically kicked the ball, but before any of his teams had kicked the ball for us, I was like, right, he's back. This is amazing. We never have thought he would come back. And you knew that he was coming back with his eyes on prizes and to continue that relentless success that he's enjoyed. And also, as he said at the time, to make some sort of inroads in Europe and to be the guy that is in charge of the club when we get a result like that. And that result will be attached to his name, and if that's an ego thing, fine, I don't care. Also, the record that we've currently got in the league with the 0 goals conceded, that goes back to 1907 or whatever it was. Like, he was keen to bring that up in the interview post-match as well, because he wanted to spread the praise around the whole team for collectively breaking that record, and it stood for that long for a reason.
Yeah.
So all these things, there'll be records that he's looking at that we don't even think about, that it'll tick off, and then it'll just be mentioned in a post-match, and it'll be like, all right, there's another record. Because you think of all the records that he swatted aside in his first spell, the unbeaten run that we went on, was it 69 games?
Yep.
There was obviously unprecedented, double treble.
He normalised the winning of trebles.
Yeah.
In the modern age. I know that Martin O'Neill won a treble, I get it. I absolutely get it. But it was, one of the things that happened once in a blue moon. The only other manager prior to Martin O'Neill that had done it, and he'd done it twice, was Jock Stein. Didn't happen very often.
No.
Brendan Rodgers normalised it. I mean, since Brendan Rodgers has come in, first time round, we've won 5 trebles. It's an unbelievable run of success, JP, and he was the man that started that off, I remember there was a wee bit of back and forth with Neil Lennon, and he was like, it was your fault. He says, it was your fault as well. That mutual respect between the two managers. But that is now, and I'm not saying an entitlement of a Celtic fan, it's definitely an aspiration going into a domestic season. Win the treble. And the thing is, it wasn't always like that. And Brendan Rodgers was the man that brought that mentality even to guys like you and me.
100%, yeah. And for that to then, like, I mean, obviously he'll be a bit irked, if that's the right word, by the record in the league, in the Champions League, that will be thrown at him in terms of the thrashings that he's had from the big side. So you better believe he'll have enjoyed that last night as much as anybody else. The fact that, okay, yeah, we didn't batter Real Madrid last night, but we got a significant result in the first time of asking in the Champions League ever, which is, I mean, that's a seismic result, especially for somebody of our age who we've known pretty much is the Champions League since the Champions League starting like 92,
93, yeah.
So pretty much, man, I don't remember really the old European Cup. I don't remember how that played out, how that worked. Just, I was 10, 11.
Even if you did, you'd only been interested for the first or second round as a Celtic fan, because for the first part of my Celtic supporting life, Europe was just a pipe dream.
Nah, it was not something that you ever thought, oh well, this is going to be a long-term part of our season. We were talking last night about what was your first European game, and Davey in the pub said that he thought it was 1976 against, oh God, now the name of this team I'd never even heard before. It was called like Sachs.
Zikau Schraschring, East German side.
Yeah, that's it. So that's what he thought was his first game. Mine was against Hamburg in the UEFA Cup '96. And those were the days where you just didn't see the next round. That was just a kind of a given that happened. But yeah, going back to like remembering what the European Cup was, I mean, my first memory really of any sort of football tournament was Italia '90, which is why when I heard about Scalacci yesterday, I was like, it kind of stopped me. It's like, I totally and utterly remember watching that guy and just being in complete awe of him in that tournament.
And going into the tournament, not even having a clue who he is. And being introduced to this player through the tournament.
Which was always the World Cups when you were reading. There was no internet and there was no transfer market and all the...
There's a proper beauty about that, though. The harder the information was to come across, the more devoted you were and committed you were to the tournament. I never missed a game. Never missed a game, JP.
Yeah, because you wanted to see how the only barometer of success you had to measure with these guys wasn't what you'd seen them do in European football or club football, because you simply didn't see the club football. You saw Sports Scene and Match of the Day, and obviously
Football Focus and St. Ingrizi.
Yeah, obviously they then introduced Football Italia, and that became a big thing, and I absolutely ate that up every Sunday. I watched.
How amazing was that idea? Sit the guy in a wee cafe outside with a newspaper and a cup of coffee. I mean,
Gazzetta dello Sport. I can't even remember. I know the name of that paper because of that program.
Exactly. Yeah, it became so influential. Brilliant.
Yeah, so watching that on a Saturday morning and watching whole games on a Sunday, come back from Mass, Land of the Giants would be on, the Waltons would be on, and then Football Italia.
Listen, we can tie all of that into Celtic because we know who used to build the stages for the Waltons, because he was on This Is Acsom the other week. Matt Costello, he was a joiner on that job. No, we digress slightly, but all in a good positive sense, because we're going to come back to talk about some more of the performances last night. I want to talk about Liam Scales. Bring your comments in. Let us know how you're feeling about the other games. Where else can we pick up points in the Champions League, JP? What games are you looking at? Zagreb?
Well, naturally, you go to the home games to look at the opposition in those, and you think to yourself, I think last night's result as well, we'd have given so many people a first taste of success in that competition, because would all the same people that were at the Feyenoord game be there last night? Probably not. I think the Feyenoord game, because of what it was, there might have been a lot of tickets changed hands and whatnot, because it was a dead rubber. There might have been folk from Ireland that didn't make the journey, or folk from anywhere that didn't make the journey simply because there was nothing at stake. So last night was a full-on, complete and utter sellout in Celtic Park. All the people inside Celtic Park last night saw Celtic do something that we don't do that often. One, win a Champions League game. Two, win it handily. So the confidence that the crowd takes in to the next game, I don't think is misplaced. No. It's almost like that. I'm not saying that suddenly we're a fortress again because we've won one game and won it comfortably, but I think psychologically that has to play into like the next home game that we play, where we go in going, right, like we trust this team. We've seen this team do this to another team. You know, well, things like they just trust the process of the game. Like if the ball gets played back early on, you not notice there's not been like howls of derision at a lot of the balls that have been played back to Schmeichel. That's happened quite a lot because if Carter Vickers or Scales or Taylor or Johnston at any point ever feel like they're in trouble, straight back to Schmeichel because they trust Schmeichel. Straight back to him from far out if it needs to be done, but they don't generally take chances. I know Alistair Johnson did take one on Saturday against Hearts, which people maybe would point to where he kind of let it go a bit. But more often than not, there's a trust in the keeper there to just whack it back. And again, I think there's a trust building within the crowd to be like, not, oh, what are we doing passing it back? You know, this is...
Yeah, we're getting used to it as well, JP. It's like we know you're doing that so we can regroup and then look for the pockets of space, draw the opposition towards us and create that situation where we can make something happen again. And as a fan base, we're getting used to why they're doing it. And it's not as if they're doing it, you know, like in the early days of Ange, where it was maybe 10 or 15 passes before you get out your own first third, your defensive third. We're not seeing as much of that. It's a much quicker process.
Aye, because you're also seeing how quickly we can kill a team with 3 or 4 passes. There was many times last night where the ball goes back and suddenly a few seconds later we've got a shot at goal because the build-up play's been right. They've taken a moment to sort of either send it back the way, to recycle it, to come forward again, you know, to make sure everybody's in the right positions. But I've definitely noticed that. I mean, I don't even know. I can't claim to know loads about football tactics or anything like that. I'm just enjoy the game. I'm not going to sit here.
You're not watching it analytically, are you,
no,
JP?
No, when you're at the game? I don't. I hope I never do watch it like that because I like the fact that I watch it from a fan's perspective. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the trust and yeah, you want to talk about Liam Scales. I mean. You're saying that there's never a divider. There's always unanimous. There'll still be people this morning.
There's people in the comments, JP. There's people in the comments. Yep.
And then you're like, wow, man, really?
See on today of all days, let's make it a positive zone here at Acsom, right? Let's get rid of any negativity, JP, because I get it. I get why certain people don't like certain players. Has Liam Scales put a foot wrong this season? Like somebody might say, "Oh, he played somebody onside one time, or he played a long ball that didn't quite come off." Come on!
But you're at the point where it's like you've almost got like a giant magnifying glass over the guy, just going make a mistake.
He's been better than Carter Vickers, who I love. He's been more consistent than Carter Vickers this season.
Well, I mean, in my view, goal or no goal last night, he was brilliant. It had to be. The whole team had to be. You're not carrying passengers on a night like that. You're genuinely not. You don't get results like that at that level if you've got guys playing below par, and there's no way he was. So I mean, obviously the goal's icing on the cake. Great delivery from Engels, who really can whip in a ball, and there was so much power on the ball in that, I mean, it was, and he caught it so close to the goal. There was no way any keeper was saving that.
No, it went right through the goalie with the power and the spin on the ball, right through him.
Yeah. So I mean, Scales for his goal alone, obviously amazing, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's. When they were talking about it, I listened to a bit of BBC when I was coming out of the game, and Pat Bonner was talking about how he'd spoken to Liam Scales and he'd said, you know, how the step up, like Atletico Madrid away was like hardest game he'd ever played and everything else. But Pat Bonner was saying that things like that experience, obviously getting absolutely horsed 6-0, those sort of experiences at that level can make you go, right, well, at least I know that's the level. Like, that's what I need to get to in terms of concentration, everything about that. That's what I need to get to. And he basically was saying, and then they were all like, oh, so you're taking credit for his form packet and all that. And he was just like, no, it's just a conversation that we had, but it was interesting to hear from a guy who's not played at that level. And they rhymed off the three, Tom English rhymed off the three big things that had happened to him, like last January for Aberdeen. And it was like would it have been last January or the January before? When was it Aberdeen?
2 seasons ago.
Right.
Seasons ago. Yeah, so
right.
Darvel, you're talking Darvel and that.
Space of 10 days, he got beat off Darvel. They got beat 6-0 off I think it was either Hibs or Hearts. And then he got sent off or scored their own goal in another game, but it was in the space of like 10 games.
Yeah.
And then you think about, like, fast forward to last night, and he's scoring against Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League and getting the sponsors man of the match.
Yeah.
Talk about a turnaround. How could you not be pleased for a guy that's done that?
It's the mental fortitude that we used to speak about when we discussed Anthony Ralston coming out from the cold and making the right back jersey his own, and then becoming a very important part of the squad, which he still is. And Liam Scales has done that and actually done it better, done it with more gusto. Like, I think when Liam Scales came in, because I put out a wee message this morning on the Twitter in relation to him, because I thought he was colossal last night. He was brilliant, right? And people saying, you were one of the guys that was criticising him. Since he came into the Celtic side under Brendan Rodgers, that's simply not true. I've not been a critic of Liam Scales. What I've said all during last season is there were two areas of the team that we had to strengthen, and the two areas were centre half and left back. Now, the proof is in the pudding, because last night Liam Scales won the man of the match, opened the scoring, put in a brilliant performance, and there was £10 million worth of centre half sitting on the bench, kicking their heels. And I think that speaks volumes. When I was critical of Liam Scales, it was when we signed him. And I said it on here. And it was maybe a wee bit of the Luke McCowan scenario. I was saying, look at the standard of football that he's been playing. And plenty of our Irish listeners said, Paul, you're underestimating the level that he's been playing at with Shamrock Rovers. And maybe I was. And when we signed him, I thought, he's never going to be a Celtic player. And I remember watching him against Dundee United, where he scored that brilliant goal. And I'm thinking, maybe this player's got something. There was also a game against Ross County where it was the Ralston game, where he sets up the first goal. And I'm thinking to myself, we might have a player here, but we were playing him out of position. He never...
The Bodo Glimt game killed Liam Scales.
Yeah.
Initially at Celtic.
Under Ange. That was his Ange kind of career done, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think in the eyes of the supporters as well, like that team that went out there, that game was going out not to win that game. I think it was just
strange, that wasn't it?
I think Ange had chucked it after the first leg.
We went out with a whimper.
Yeah,
it was so disappointing.
We didn't go out with any kind of. It just felt like a limp game. There
was none of that tenacity and high tempo, and it was It was almost as if you weren't watching an Ange team. It was very unusual. But you're right, Scales, he got loads of flack for that particular, and then he gets punted on loan to Aberdeen. The only reason they don't buy him is because they don't have the money. And I was talking to a couple of Aberdeen fans who were desperate to sign him permanently, JP. I think they were talking, was it 800 grand, something like that? And Aberdeen were bidding 750. They couldn't find the extra 50k. It gets thrown in during an injury crisis under Brendan Rodgers, and he has not looked back. Any doubters out there, come on. Let us know your reasons. You can't doubt the guy. He's got 2 of the Champions League Man of the Match performances on his bookshelf. I'm sure he's got a bookshelf. Absolutely brilliant. Superb turnaround to the point where Rodgers last season said it was unlike anything he's seen in his coaching career, JP. And I don't think he was just saying that, to breathe confidence into the player.
I put faith at the time that we signed him in the several comments that I read by people that were clearly Irish, lived in Ireland, watched the game, and maybe it was, I don't know, naive confidence that I was taken from those comments. But there was comments where they were basically saying this guy will do a job for you, and he's a player, and there's no way they were saying, watch this, he'll be scoring in the Champions League within 2 years and winning man of the match performances. But there was just a collective review from all of those comments that I was just like, there must be something about this guy. There's no way that we're signing a player that is quite clearly at that level. He must have played above his level to get this move. You don't just get a move to Celtic, surely, based on absolutely nothing. But then I guess there has been so many times where we have signed players and they've gone on to do nothing. And maybe if circumstances have been different and the players that we signed for that particular player's position didn't do the business, then maybe they would have got in. Like, the only reason Scales has got in is because our recruitment in terms of Lagerbielke and Nawrocki were obviously not at the level that they should have been, because those guys came in, didn't make the shot their own. Scales did make it his own, and then they couldn't get in after that. So that might have happened many times before, but the fact is that there's a combination of things with the bad recruitment and the fact that Liam Scales was fit and ready to play and obviously had a good attitude, and Rodgers saw that very early on, hence why he took him to Japan and played him.
It's a great point. Rodgers saw it. It's all praise goes to the player, JP, but Rodgers saw it. And Rodgers started playing him in his best position, which was left centre back. He hadn't played there. He'd been getting played at left back, remember? A marauding, overlapping fullback. And Rodgers saw something different in the player. So he's got to take some credit, isn't he, Brendan Rodgers?
I wouldn't be surprised if you interviewed Liam Scales today, that he would bring that up. He would say that Brendan Rodgers and the confidence of having the confidence of a manager as good as Brendan Rodgers. And incidentally, I've still not watched the documentary, so I'm looking forward to that.
You know why? You know why I haven't watched it? For the same reason I never watched Peaky Blinders or The Sopranos or whatever when it was out, right? I need to have the proper setup where I'm sitting and concentrating on it, JP. I can't just watch it casually. I need to be completely invested in it. So when I get, what's it going to be, 90 minutes long, something like that? I'll sit down and I'll get the popcorn out and watch it, because all I've heard is good things, positive reviews about it.
Yeah, no, I look forward to seeing it myself. But I mean, it will be in that you'll get a peek behind the curtain in terms of what Brendan Rodgers is like with the players, because you've obviously seen it here and there, but not completely candid like that. So I think, Liam Scales would surely say a manager of Brendan Rodgers' stature and experience backing you would be huge. I think for a player, it would. If you thought you were operating at 70% of your ability, but Brendan Rodgers gave you the scope to go for 85% of your ability, that extra work that you need to put in to get to that, I think for someone like Brendan Rodgers, you would do it. Even if it really, really destroyed you in terms of like, right, we'll do however many laps around the pitch,
and step it up. Yeah, you're right.
I'll do another 10 because I know that I've got work to do to get up to a certain level. And Brendan Rodgers, as much as he says quality, he says work. He's about work rate, and I don't doubt for a second that Liam Scales is put in the work, because that's why he's getting the rewards that he's getting.
I think the thing with Brendan, right, a couple of points that we have discussed in the past is, kind of failed or underachieving footballers are all over all the various podcasts and all the rest of it, telling their funnies. Listen, there's a market for it. People like to hear it, JP. But how many have come onto these podcasts and told a kind of like caricature version of what Brendan Rodgers is? And that's where the Gucci belt comes in and all this kind of stuff, talking in Spanish and all that. And to me, I just think it's a mentality issue. Like, if you're the type of player that's not willing to take on board what he's got to offer, then you'll get sent on loan to Stoke like Haksabanovic. You'll be out the door. Simple as that. And I think a lot of the guys that tell the jokes as if Brendan's a joke figure, The joke's on them. Because Rodgers is an achiever. And you know, I don't know what the opposite to imposter syndrome is. But see, like last night, after the game, 5-1, there's absolutely not any sense of that with Brendan Rodgers. He's standing getting interviewed thinking to himself, aye, this is me. This is where I should be. And I love that. And I don't see it as arrogance. Because if you want to succeed and get better, you've got to have that leader, haven't you? Like you say, to be able to get that level of performance out of Liam Scales, and listen, the majority of the credit goes to the player. The manager's played a big part in that. I think Kuhn is another example of it, right? So here's a player we've spoken about. He had opportunities at Ajax and Leipzig and also Bayern Munich. So he's had opportunities at big clubs, and for some reason, there's been something missing. And then you play under Brendan Rodgers, and finally, he's playing at that level. Finally, he's playing at Champions League level. And I thought he came on to a good game last night. He was one of my tips for this season. And I still don't think he's fully flowing yet. I think there's more to come from him. But I do believe that Rodgers has got that knack. It's a personal touch. It's a man management skill. You can't teach it. You can't buy it. But he's definitely got it, JP.
You don't get given the jobs that he's been given. You don't get asked back to Celtic unless you've got what it takes. The Celtic job is such a nuanced, huge, pressured job, and there's people that have come into it before who maybe kind of thought that they had the sort of the size of it, you know, in their.
Well, John Barnes is a classic example of that.
Yeah, I mean, and Tony Mowbray had the history that he had with the club as well, and maybe felt like it was like, well, this was always going to happen. I know I'm a good manager, and Tony Mowbray, I think, is a good manager at a different level, and maybe without the pressure of Celtic. Maybe it was the timing of when he was there. Maybe a different era. Tony Mowbray might have had success, but I mean, the Celtic manager's job. That's why. Like last season, when there was knives out for Brendan Rodgers, you're kind of like, well, hold on a minute. If we get rid of Brendan Rodgers, as you're suggesting, who's coming in?
What's the alternative? Yeah,
because we've clearly got a manager that knows how to win, and if he gets his sort of ducks in a row within the club, will do well. It's about Celtic sorting itself out to accommodate Brendan Rodgers, not Brendan Rodgers sorting himself out to accommodate Celtic. That was what was happening last season. Mm-hmm. Thank God, whatever conversations he had with the hierarchy persuaded them to actually push the boat out and spend some money for a change, and not make you or I look stupid about talking about us spending 25 and 36 million. So we actually did go out and spend money, and maybe it took someone like Brendan Rodgers to get those deals done, because maybe another manager doesn't get that same trust.
Without a doubt, JP, Ronnie Dyler wouldn't have got those deals done. I don't even think Neil Lennon would have got them done, and pushed for it. And obviously, you go back to signing Carter Vickers and Jota. Mm-hmm. That was massive. That requires a manager to be really pushing for it. Mm-hmm. And Brendan's got that influence as well. I can't go through the show today without talking about Kyogo and Maeda, so we'll definitely be focusing on them for a bit as well. But I do want to get some of the thoughts coming in there. Yeah, Jungle Lion. As your man Vice said last night, he felt he was in a Hoover all night. Yeah, he was like the pantomime villain last night, wasn't he? I'm talking about the player, not the manager.
The player said that, did he? Not the manager.
Well, who knows? Actually, I've not seen the quote. But I liked the history of their manager. I did. I know that, listen, we're never going to like his son because he played with Rangers, right? Has he not got 5 stars tattooed on his arm or something? Bizarre. I think he might have. But the dad, what a calibre of coach he is. You know, he played at the 1990 World Cup with Moravcik for Czechoslovakia, managed by Josef Venglos. You know, I like all these connections. And Venglos was in the Slovan Bratislava squad when we played them in 63-64. But he was dropped for the games against Celtic. So he never actually appeared as a player against Celtic, although they did have Anton Moravcik. Me and John were talking about this yesterday. Must be a relative of Lubo. Why he was called Anton, who knows? Celtic girl.
After Anton Rogan.
A wee bit like Anton Rodgers then. That was the best night of my life, says Celtic girl. That's amazing. Parked up at the Forge, a wee curry at McCann's to start, then just simply paradise delivered all my dreams. Genuinely the best night of my life. That's what Celtic can do to you. I love it. Stephen Sloan, welcome back. I hope you're doing well, my friend. We made more money last night in that one game than we will if we win the league. That's frightening, isn't it? And again, what is it, 300 grand a goal? 300 grand a goal you make in this tournament. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Wow.
I think we made something like £3.6 million in prize money. That doesn't include your ticket money and the revenue spent by fans in the stadium and hospitality, corporate and all that broadcasting. 3.6 million quid. That's sensational. IH Decorating, you're in on the YouTube. And leaving was a blessing, you say. We are so lucky to have Brendan at the helm. Get him on a long-term bumper deal ASAP. Listen, I'll tell you one thing that an old-timer said to me, JP, that you'll be disappointed at losing heroes, but at a club like Celtic, there's another hero just round the corner, and it's so true, isn't it? Because how gutted were we when Ange left the building? How gutted were we when Jota left the building? Matt O'Reilly's the latest one. But there's another hero just round the corner at Celtic, isn't there?
I mean, it does go to show that if you're doing your job right within the club in terms of recruitment, then it should be seamless, and there should be players coming in of the same level that leave. It's definitely not something that we've ever been used to in our Celtic supporting lives, because how often have we seen a player come in who looks like he has the potential to be our record sale rather, and I don't like thinking about that too far down the line, but ultimately you have to think like that if you want to be a progressive football club and progress far beyond your rivals in the domestic scene, but then catch up with your rivals. And look at the sales that your top 10 sides in Europe will put through and the signings that they'll make. We're so far away from that. Mm-hmm. We need to bridge the gap in terms of get to the point where we are buying and selling players for north of 10 million, selling them for 20, 30, and that's not just once in a blue moon. It's regular.
Yeah, you're right. It just moving everything up a notch. One final point: Kyogo was getting a bit of stick at half time last night on the stream and on the comments, and he comes out and by the way, I say plenty of predictions that are wrong on this. So when I say something that's right, I'm going to be clinging my jacket onto it. I hang my jacket on it. I said Kyogo will come out, Celtic will score in the first 10 minutes of the second half, and that's exactly what happened, right? But you can't write him off, JP. And I think when you watch the game back and you remove the emotional element of watching it live, you watch the game back, he was making the runs last night, and we weren't finding him. And then when he got the opportunities, two that I remember in the first half, he wasn't as decisive and as clinical as he was when the chance came in the second half. But you can't write him off. This is his platform, isn't it? This is his playground. He's good enough at this level.
He's now scored, 3 Champions League goals?
And the 2 last season were tremendous. Both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no concerns over Kyogo at this level. I mean, you would back him to score against Dortmund away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's not as if he's only going to do the business against small teams or whatever. Kyogo's got so much trickery and pace and just incisive runs. Like, he could do that against anybody. Mm-hmm. So for that reason alone, I wouldn't be going, adopting a kind of scorched earth sort of policy with regards to Kyogo and just be like, oh well, he's not playing well, get him out, get Ida, and it's just like, well, no, he's got enough credit in the bank, I think, to be able to point to, well, I scored that goal and I scored that goal as well, and there's a lot that he can point to remind us or anybody that was getting a bit frustrated with him last night that he can do the business. And Maeda coming in and scoring as well at that level, I think that might have been his first Champions League goal. I can't think of him scoring another one.
What a performance by Maeda overall, unbelievable. He was everywhere.
Yeah. It just doesn't give people a minute's peace, and they wouldn't have played against anybody like that. There was quite a few types of players, I think, in our team last night that they wouldn't have really come up against. Will they have come up against anybody as good as Engels in their travels so far in the qualifying rounds. I don't know if there would have been anybody that they played against.
I think so. They kept referring to Midtjylland as being one of the teams that they beat.
Midtjylland. If we'd caught Midtjylland at a different time, like later on that season, we would have hammered them.
My only disappointment, as well as getting bounced out, because remember, it went to extra time away from home for them to win the tie. I just felt you had Sviatchenko against Edward during the 2 games there. And we knew enough about Sviatchenko. We knew his weaknesses. As a football team, we had all the data at our disposal. Sviatchenko bossed Edward over the 2 games. That was one of my biggest disappointments. There was plenty of others, like near Beaton getting sent off and Barkas in the first game and all this stuff. But that was the one thing I thought to myself, that was so avoidable and predictable. We could have predicted what Sviatchenko was going to do and how he would perform. And we should have been able to target that, but we didn't. But you're right. They would have faced Maeda, who is a unique type of player. He's absolutely something else. I mean, the work rate is unreal. And the point you made on Kyogo, right? We've had a lot of players who have done the business, and then the Champions League has maybe been a step too far for them. And I'm going to throw in Lee Labada. I thought Lee Labada was a great player for Celtic. I can't remember him doing it in the Champions League, though. JP, at that level, making a real impact on a game. I do remember him looking like a rabbit in the headlights against Real Madrid in the home game. So, yeah, it takes a special type of player to make that step up. Kyogo certainly did that last night. I'm still buzzing, in case you hadn't noticed. JP will also still be buzzing, and hopefully everybody in the comment section will also be feeling great today. Let us know your thoughts and your movements over the next 24 hours or so. How are you going to enjoy that victory? 1,200 strong on the live stream. If you want to come and see Acsom live, then you can do so. We are going to be with Gordon Strack and John Hartson. This is a popular one. I know there's over a month to go, but we're heading towards a sellout. I'm thinking I might just introduce them to the stage and then go and sit in the audience and watch them go, because they don't need me on the stage, Strachan and Hartson, do they? Tickets available underneath this video. And if you want to go and see Jerry Taylor tonight at Gracie's, there are still tickets available for Blame It on the Bucky. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and one last shout out. I'm on the hunt. I'm on the hunt for 3 tickets for Dortmund. It's a big ask, JP. It's a big ask.
Well, it's an even bigger ask to actually get there, as if you have figured out. It's an away game too far. If it was a wee bit further down the line, possibly, but
it's come pretty quickly in the schedule, isn't it?
It's just too quick. And like I said to many friends who were talking about going, the prices of all of that travel around there or thereabouts at that time will have already been crazy anyway, because we're so close to it. It's like if you try to book a train to go to London this weekend, you'll pay an absolute fortune. You need to book, a good couple of months, 2-3 months in advance to get any sort of deal. So it'll be the same. I thought you could just maybe fly to somebody else in Germany and then get a train, but even the flights to somebody else in Germany are extortionate. So
is that dynamic pricing in full flow? It is, isn't it?
Could well be.
Yeah.
They were already expensive, and then suddenly you've got a surge by, thousands of Celtic fans all looking at options. It just drives the price up across the board. So it's really frustrating, but
I know it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same going down to London, because I'm London for Oasis. That's the only tickets I could get.
All right, aye.
So it's going to be the same.
You need to find out the time to book your travel, and then book it straight away as soon as you've got that window, because as soon as they're available to buy, they're just going to go up in price from that minute on. Like the train prices, and they're eye-watering. Like my mate's mum and dad paid like £500 to get the 2 return trips to London, and that was like a week and a half or something in advance.
That's incredible. No, that is incredible. But anybody out there who hears of anything, very interesting that we do require 3 tickets for Dortmund. So let us know. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And it's a Thursday afternoon where we're all smiles. So thank you, JP Mason, for sharing that with us. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30 for a Celtic State of Mind.